Hi and welcome to In Talks With. I'm Danielle Radojcin. In this episode, I'm speaking with the artist Jenkin van Zyl. Jenkin is a cult figure known for his outrageous costumes and extreme makeup and his ambitious film installations, which often include elements of horror, animal prosthetics and giant inflatables, as well as drawing from club culture, fashion editorial and medieval folkloric tropes. Still only in his 20s, he recently won acclaim for his film Lunars, which appeared in the Kiss My Genders show at the Hayward Gallery, and he also received critical acclaim for his work in the exhibition Horror Show at Somerset House last year. Opening in late January 2023, Jenkin's new exhibition Surrender is at Adele Asante Gallery in central London. It explores the worlds of roleplay and fantasy with a queer irreverence. The film melds the 20th century phenomenon of dance marathons, grueling endurance competitions in which couples participated in non-stop dancing for hundreds of hours, with the mythical story of the Rat King. The exhibition itself is entered via the gaping jaws of an enormous inflatable rat sculpture whose fleshy innards create a sculptural walkway leading to the inner sanctum of a love hotel from where you can immerse yourself in the film. One morning, during the first week of January, I visited Jenkin at Adele Asante, where he was in the process of installing his momentous new show. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Jenkin. It's really nice to meet you. And we're here at the Adele Asante Gallery in the middle of London, and it's like a cold, well, it's not that cold, but it's a January morning, first week back in January sort of feeling, and it feels quite, I was just grabbing a coffee before I came here, and it's got that feeling. Everyone looks a little bit...
Everyone looks cracked, cracked out and
they don't want to be there, but they're just trying to hit the year head on.
It's been really strange because we've had like this 18-month kind of lead up to the show since the filming sort of started germinating for it, and so like this huge like build up of tension happened before Christmas, and then you have this like dead week. So it's been like really strange coming back and like having to like recollect my head and be like back in the sort of zone of a week ago. But it's like good to hit it running. But yeah, depressing vibes in London today for sure.
Have you been working on this over the whole period while everyone else goes underground, or did you just switch off?
Yeah, I've been kind of tying up the loose ends of stuff. So like there's a kind of series of like small trophies that I was painting, and just the sort of the dire jobs that you've been like putting off was the stuff that I was doing on Christmas Day. So
that's what it's there for.
That's what it's there for. Yeah, the dead time.
Yeah. So this is a new show that's opening here, and it's opening at the end of January. How long is it running?
I think it's until mid-March, or beginning of March. Yeah.
First solo show?
It's the first kind of significant film solo show that I've done in London. I've done like kind of equivalent scale projects that have been shown within sort of group exhibitions. But yeah, it's like really exciting to have something of this kind of precision and magnitude and all that in London. It's like, yeah, I'm gassed. It's exciting.
Is it called? It's called Surrender.
Yeah.
So tell me, because it's not up yet. We're here, and when I arrived, you're sort of installing it. So
yeah, exactly. We've moved the theatre flats in, so that's going to provide the kind of main structure of it. But other than that, like nothing's in the space. So it's sort of, I've got like ants in my pants, like waiting, like itching to start. So it's to kind of set the background of the sort of work that I make. I've like spent the last 3 films that I made working kind of guerrilla style, breaking and entering into different Hollywood film sets, and then kind of performing reenactments, queer reenactments of these legacies of kind of epic filmmaking, like Game of Thrones and kind of spaghetti westerns on the ruins of what's left over. And so like from that like method, I was like interested in it kind of conceptually as a mode of breaking and entering and kind of reclaiming and reworking and reenacting. But it just became like impossible to sort of like plot out and kind of work more narratively. So like this is the first film that I've done that has been shot all in London, kind of with a more conventional filmmaking language. It's based off of a triad of different phenomena. So like it's based off of 20th century dance marathons in America, which were these kind of long form pageants of fatigue in which couples would kind of perform dancing almost like months, sometimes non-stop, until like kind of one couple remained. There's like a famous film they shoot or something that's based off of it. So you have kind of this idea of the dance marathon that I was really interested in, kind of.
So hang on, let's just go back dance. So dance marathon. So whereabouts in America did these take place?
It was a kind of cross-American phenomenon, but
and is there a time
into the 20s, into the 30s.
Okay. So sort of around Depression, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. So they started off, I think, more as a kind of a fad, and it was in that era of kind of excitement at people doing like pole standing for like months on end, or like these kind of endurance competitions, and it was all about seeing people kind of suffer in motion in public,
like circus.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's interesting about the dance marathons is that they became this proto-reality TV where the producers would sort of manipulate and construct storylines for the different couples to like enact within the aim of like increasing ticket sales or like fluctuating moments of drama or narrative.
So how have you then used that in what you're doing?
So I've mixed that in with this idea of I was doing some research at the Bishopsgate Institute, which is in Shoreditch, Liverpool Street, and they've got this amazing archive that's sort of been developed by this guy Stefan that works there, and it's the London like Fetish Archive, and they collect a lot of like visual material and like documents of like they've got like this amazing collection of like basically every printed like porn magazine from the 20th century, but they have a lot of these like strange kind of documents and minutes of meetings that were taking place in like hotels across the UK that were like either like swinger retreats or these kind of fantasy retreats that were taken by like various people in the 20th century. And I became interested in these like hotels as like disguising or like hosting these kind of extreme deviant behaviours, but like almost in plain sight, like these really banal like retreats that were hosting kind of really extreme, for the time, like strange behaviours. And then the third thing that I was looking at was this idea of the rat king, which is a sort of cryptid law of the idea that if a kind of burrow of rats like huddle together in the ground, like in the cold, that their semi-prehensile tails will sort of grapple together to stay warm. But as the kind of mix of like blood and sweat and kind of ice like begin to develop around the tails, that they will form like a kind of permanent knot. And the more that they try and wriggle away, the more the knot sort of becomes irreparably bound. I think it's always become this sort of like pseudo-science thing where most of the versions of these rat kings that have been found have been like created by circus kind of salesmen and stuff. But I became interested in that, in this idea of kind of like community building in a way, and the sort of grappling for a sense of place or like meaning. And so all of these kind of, this triad of stuff like mixes together into a quite fantastical, surrealist narrative in the film. And I suppose like how I'm transposing the idea of the dance marathon into this period is that I have like an interest in hedonism and kind of club culture and this idea of long form kind of dancing and the queer dance floor, but also kind of in this backdrop of this moment of what seems like perpetual declining living standards. So there's a lot of kind of, I mean, in the film it's sort of like a free fall, like it's quite it's like quite a chaotic journey, but I think those are some of the things that I was touching on when starting to think about making it.
How does it compare to other films that you've made? I know you became quite celebrated for your Lunas film, which was part of the Hayward Gallery's Kiss My Genders show, which was on in 2019. That film was quite, it brought in a lot of elements of horror, and that did have what seems to me anyway, those references to club culture.
Yeah.
Definitely, I could see elements almost like, I could see when you're talking about those dance competitions, I could almost see the kernels of those sort of ideas already happening.
Yeah.
Is this Surrender project a continuation of that kind of idea, or are people going to see something really different?
I think like Luna's had quite a scrambled like narrative structure, but this film is more conventionally narrative, so it follows kind of one character, Grace, as she travels through a week staying at this couple's retreat in a hotel, And the film's kind of told through her propulsion forward. So she's in this perpetual act of kind of yearning, and that yearning and the kind of her desire for, she doesn't really know what, that kind of pulls the film back round. And in a sort of, I guess, like a nod to the weird way that we watch art films in the gallery, and that they like perpetually loop into themselves. When she reaches Sunday, it's like back to the Monday, and then she kind of re-enters the marathon. So she's perpetually caught in this kind of competition.
So how long is the film actually? That's good.
It's 50 minutes.
50.
So it's kind of in this weird space between short and feature, I guess.
And is the lead actress, the lead, is it a woman or is it?
Yeah, she's my best friend Alex. So like we've worked together. Her name's Alex Margot Arden. She's an artist as well. Yeah, we've worked together on the last few films. She would like hold me at gunpoint if she wasn't in the movie. So she like bullied me into becoming the lead starlet. Yeah.
The films that I've seen of yours, there's element of horror, and I can see reference a lot to kind of almost like the goriness of horror films, but there's always a sort of humour and lightness to it somehow. I think it's in Luna's, there's an image of two arms in an arm wrestle, and it looks like they're covered in blood, and then you kind of show actually that you pour some glossy paint or something on top of the arms, and it almost takes you into a different reality of what the film is. For me, it was like a sense of relief.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in at least in terms of tempo and narrative. I'm interested in these moments of extreme tension that then break into the total ridiculousness or the absurd. So like the idea that like the location might be this kind of desert landscape, and then the backdrop gets pulled up and you realise that you're in a studio, but then the studio's backdrop gets pulled up and you realise that you're back in the desert. Like I'm interested in those moments of reveal and disguise and deception.
So it's always sort of showing that it is theatre.
Yeah, right? Exactly, yeah. And I think that's an interesting kind of, I think like one thing I'm really interested in or find in the film work, particularly in the kind of performance aspect of it, is this relief in the idea of multiplicity or like anonymity. And so like a lot of the films they make use of like extreme prosthetics or kind of like silicone full face masks that get used in stuff like bank robberies and stuff. And I'm interested in them as both something quite frightening, but also something that could be like a bit liberatory or
because you can hide behind it.
Yeah, so. And the idea, I find that like quite a freeing proposal, or like the idea that identity can be like remixed or revised, but also that identity can also be a trap. So it's not kind of overly optimistic, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it is quite an interesting idea, especially in this day and age of multiple identities across the internet and.
But people just won't shut up about themselves. I think, like in a way, like to have anonymity is a kind of interesting reprise from.
It's the ultimate luxury.
The ultimate luxury, yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I'm interested in things like doppelgangers or clones or scrums or crowds, and things being duplicated or like confused or blurred or slipped about. I think that's something, because I used to do all of the. Just out of necessity, it was just like me and when I first started making films, it was me and my roommate Eugenia that kind of did like a lot of the core performances in our flat. And so like if someone needed to be like sat on fire or like, I mean the stuff that I was doing was like totally stupid and ridiculous, would not do that now, but like setting myself on fire, or like if someone needs to be like dragged through the dirt or whatever, like obviously you just do what's at hand. And I kind of miss because now I kind of work a lot more behind the camera and do like all of the other roles on set. I kind of miss that liberatory kind of pleasure of performing and stuff.
I wanted to ask you about that actually, the difference between you and your appearance and how you present yourself and the films, because it feels quite like two quite different things.
Yeah, I mean that's good. I mean I'm glad to hear that. I find like I find the two separate. Like in some ways, like the stuff that I can attain through the filmmaking is what I find frustrating about the kind of fixedness of like presentation in like daily life and the kind of trap of being misunderstood within that, maybe.
Was it like a conscious decision not to appear in your films, or is it a practical thing?
No, it's a practical thing now. I mean, just because I'm basically doing everything from like set to costume to primary camera to editing to all this other bullshit, and even though it's very collaborative, I'm already doing too many roles, so I can't be writhing around as well, unfortunately.
And where did you learn all this? I mean, it's amazing what you can do with your makeup, and I've seen videos of you on YouTube doing these extreme beauty routines, and you can do it all yourself, and it's quite advanced stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, where did you learn to do all this?
I'm not sure. I guess just came from being like an overactive Halloween goer as like a little baby. But I've always had like an interest in sort of like theatrics and extreme kind of body alteration and it's also like out of necessity. Like I just feel like that's kind of like my urge is like too high. Like I have to do it. I don't know. It's just along the route.
And then let's just talk about the journey. So and you grew up in Surrey.
Yeah.
And from what you said in the past, it was your basic bright lights, big city kid in the.
So I grew up near Guildford, and there was always like a speed train that you could get up to London. So like London was always like just within reach. So I used to go up like whenever I could and like sleep in the train station until the first train took me back home. And so like a lot of like formative like going out stuff was in my like mid-teens, coming up to London, and then moved here when I was 18. So I've been here for I guess like 11, 12 years now. And spent a bulk amount of that time in art school, which I think is quite a delusional way to spend.
So where did you do your foundation?
I went to Camberwell, and then went to Slade, and then after that I had a year out in which I lived in Berlin for a bit, and then came back and went to the RA. And because of COVID, the RA kind of stretched into this like 4-year experience. And the RA is like at the best of times. I mean, I love my time there, but it's like a contained kind of claustrophobic tunnel that you live in.
Literally,
it's literally a tunnel.
Quite a tunnel, isn't it?
And so, I think like by the time that our year had graduated, everyone was kind of clawing to get out. But it's a wonderful school. I wish there was more stuff like that, in that it's the only kind of fully, like it's free art school. They give like a certain amount of like bursary support to try and cover some of the like burdens of studying in London.
I'm imagining there's a lot of enjoyment of nightlife and what it has to offer in London and probably in Berlin. How are those two compare? Like, how do they compare, the Berlin scene, London scene?
So I haven't been back there since before COVID. I think I'd like now is the sort of, as I'm hitting my late 20s, and the fatigue starts to hit. I like the idea of the clubs in Berlin when you can like dip into like really extreme like high hedonism, but like at like Sunday morning. I really like that like routine of like getting up, having a coffee, and then going into like the hell mouth.
So it's almost like starting out in a completely normal, banal thing, and then taking it somewhere completely.
Because the nights will run like from a Friday to a Monday or whatever. Like you can kind of dip in at any point, and the intensity level will be the same. And I think that's kind of missing here. But
and were there what were the nights that you were going to in London? Are there any that have been like formative or really?
I really liked the cause, which was like kind of in huge swing, like just when COVID stuff was relaxing. And the first like night that I went to when the nightclubs could open, it was like on the Sunday at 12, like at midnight or whatever.
When lockdown ended.
Yeah, so you could start like queuing up outside the club, but they could only open the door.
Where was it? What was it?
It was at the cause. The night was called Adonis, but I just remember it's quite a labyrinthine venue. It's shut down now, but
where was it?
It's in Tottenham. But it was just this thrill of like, it didn't feel like people were clubbing for the first night out of many in the future. At that point, it felt like it was the only night out, like the last night out before like the world ended. And there was such a like heady mix of like dread and like titillation and excitement. And that was like really magic.
And did everyone really dress up?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, everyone was just like wearing thongs. It was like really hot. Like the sweat was like full torrents of rain from the ceiling. I just remember my friend had bought this like really stupid lip gloss with the it's like one of those kind of like tingle lipsticks that make you feel like you've got temporary kind of like lip filler. And we just like kept on like smothering it like over our lips the whole night. I felt like I had these kind of like huge like banana lips. It was really my lasting impression. But yeah.
And let's talk about I want to talk about your look as well, because that must be a huge part of your own self-expression.
Yeah.
And today, I mean.
Oh, she's not dressed up that much today. I'm
getting a bit of Game of Thrones, but a bit of like, you're wearing a tabard.
Yeah.
Which looks like it looks like, it looks, is that a costume or?
Yeah, so I
like a leather tabard
collect a lot of theatre costumes.
It looks vintage.
Yeah, I think it's probably like from I mean, they're really good at breaking down in theatre companies. But there's always this idea that like theatre stuff would be made really poorly, but because they have to last for like such long durations of like heavy wear, they're normally made quite robust, which I think is always kind of good for me because I'm a very like heavy wearer of clothes. I'll like wear like my best outfit to like paint walls and stuff. I'm like really bad for being precious about things.
So do you make your clothes, and would you go to costume shops and rent them or buy them?
No, so like mostly like me and Alex, the kind of lead in this film, like we have a kind of shared obsession with collecting theatre stuff. So she will go to theatre costume sales. So like some of the big ones that we went to was the Royal Shakespeare Company did one in Stratford-upon-Avon. Some other ones that I won't mention because I don't want people going to them. That one in particular was funny because we had to queue for 30 hours in the rain in like a tent. And normally like our method is that she is allowed anything pink and I'm allowed anything that's kind of like on the armour end, and like the things in between we have to fight over. But the price range and stuff like that will be like £3 for like a tabard like this, or like so it was always really cheap. But I think the way that those things work has like shifted slightly since COVID. It's like more behind closed doors and stuff, which is a shame. But yeah, we love a tip off. We'll like travel anywhere in Europe to
30 hours. That's quite dedicated.
Yeah, but I think I'm into the like heightened sense of reality that you get with like theatre costumes, but also this idea of like kind of cross period mixing. So like I like kind of bizarre combinations of historical periods that kind of form new ahistorical realities, and
it's like this.
Like this, I guess. Yeah.
Medieval night.
Medieval. But yeah, like I'm into remixing in that as well. And like I think like out of necessity from going out, like my go-to will be something like really baroque and heavy on top with like a jock strap, just so that you have a kind of breathing space somewhere.
Yeah, and all that makeup as well.
Your
skin needs to breathe at some point.
Yeah, you need the sweat to go somewhere.
You've got like the Bond girl, gold dyeing. That's really interesting.
But what happened? Did one of them die? Oh no, that's in the film.
Didn't she die from being sprayed with gold paint?
The actress or in the film?
I think the actress. I hope.
Because I think it was the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. They were painting him with like some kind of like lead or something.
That's right. It was like toxic.
Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, you just think like Wizard of Oz is quite
cursed film.
Let's talk about though. I mean, I was interested, reading about this idea of guerrilla filming and using abandoned sets.
Mm-hmm. The first one that we shot in was in the south of Spain, so it's where they made a lot of the Italian spaghetti westerns, and the idea was that the Spanish kind of labour force.
What film was that for?
That was for my degree show at Slate. So this is like years and years ago. But that film became the basis of like the methodology that I continued afterwards. So they would like film in the Almerian desert because it had a cheap like labour force essentially. So they would go and like exploit the kind of cheaper working conditions, and all of the kind of Clint Eastwood films like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly were shot there. And then interestingly, a lot of the extras that were living and working in that area bought up the land that the sets were on after the productions had left. And then slowly tried to turn it into a kind of tourist destination. So I think like somewhat unsuccessfully, like they're all rotting, decaying, not very impressive. Maybe they get like 3 people coming through in an afternoon.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? It like adds a lot of romance to the... Do you feel like it adds this romantic layer to what you're doing?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're filming in a place that has all this history.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like treading on this like really kind of fertile ground of this section of different productions that have happened in the space. But in that one, what happened was that you could rent a cabin that was on the edge of the desert where these film sets were. So we went there with like literally like a rucksack with like a cowboy hat, jock straps, and like some GoPros, and then we would try each night to like break into the sets. But there was a kind of collection of guard dogs that would like chase us around. So it was like really, really hectic. Like the film consists of a lot of like kind of strobing like torch shots of us like running through.
Blow it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably that. And then we like kind of rebuilt some of the sets back in London and kind of extended the shots, but it was like very rudimentary at that point. But then the Lunas film that was shot in the Atlas Mountains, it's basically the biggest film studio in the world. So it's an active film studio, but it's so big that they kind of can't map out like all points of it at all times. And similarly to in Spain, they do kind of guided tours. So we would go, you could again like stay in a hotel like on the edge of the desert. That meant that we like learned the patterns of like at what point in the hour they're at what point in the sets, because they would only ever have like maybe 5 people an hour going through, and we would film like as the tour guide went around behind them. And yeah, so that's kind of how we did that one. But again, like got into trouble, like almost got bit by a guard dog. It was like quite hectic and scary. Yeah, and then from that we again like rebuilt and kind of shot like more like detailed scenes in London that were embedded within the kind of stuff that we shot there.
And is that exciting to make it, to do that sort of, has that sort of illicit side to it?
I think there's a sort of adrenal like rush that comes with that hopefully shows in the film. The really
I think
funny
it definitely
one,
does.
yeah, it has this kind of hyperactive kind of rush that I think then links back to this idea. Exactly. And then the last short film that I shot prior to this one, Machines of Love, was shot in the kind of outdoor sequences were shot in Iceland in a kind of Viking film set that got built but never used for a production. So it just like constantly left dormant on this enormous horizontal frozen beach. But we were filming there on that day that people cite as like the COVID tipping point, like the 14th of March or whatever. So we like got on the flight. On the way there, we were like laughing at people wearing hazmat suits in the airport still, and on the flight back it was like we were like wearing the hazmat suits. So we were like driving to this frozen beach to go and shoot this kind of like really pinnacle like moment in the film, but each time that we managed to get mobile reception, the news would have just gotten like twice as bad. Like it was just like such a rapid deterioration. But
what, the news about COVID?
Yeah, it was like that kind of weekend where everything just deteriorated like really quickly, and we were just like how naive we'd all been that like we weren't being chased so intensely. So yeah, that was intense for different reasons.
It's crazy to think that you've made so much work during this crazy historical time of COVID and the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like a necessity to keep busy.
Yeah, something to do and keep your mind active. And I mean, I suppose also I was just thinking about these guerrilla sets, and you know, there's so much talk at the moment about environmental things and people, you know, building these virgin sets and materials that it almost feels like a good solution to work in pre-existing places.
Yeah, I mean, because they
could you not use them? Illegally go down. Was that just expensive?
I think the reason that I'm using them out of necessity because I'm working with the budgets of like you know kind of art filmmaking, not actual filmmaking. So it's a way to, at least like when I was doing the graduate stuff, it was like a way to get access to kind of scale and ambition like quite easily, but also like this kind of rogue methodology that I think was conceptually important. But
so your new film Surrender, you said that it hasn't been made in that way. It's more done on a more sort of conventional.
Yeah, so we shot.
Film set went down the normal route.
Yeah, so it's like it's mainly shot in a ballroom, and then we built like stage sets for the hotel rooms that are imagined to be like around the ballroom, and then the film ends in this like vast kind of jet engine like exhaust tunnel. So it's like a huge hole in the wall, and the idea is that whole leads to a network of tubes that run throughout the hotel that deliver canisters around. So it's like this kind of pneumatic tube system that I got from a department store that shut down.
And also, one thing we haven't talked about is how the film, well, certainly with this one, I think you're building an installation in the gallery that makes the film, watching the film, an immersive experience, like a physical immersive experience. So when you come into the space, I'd talk a bit about that, because lots of people might just end up seeing it on YouTube in an isolated film, but what does seeing it here in the gallery, in the space you've built, add to the experience?
So I think, I'm interested in the space, or treating the space as like a kind of funhouse mirror, or like a distorted version of the film's world. So like in this case, it's going to be, you walk in through this huge inflatable hellmouth of a kind of silver rat, and then the film takes place in an imagined kind of belly of this inflatable, and that takes shape in a series of kind of corridors that lead to a hotel room. And so you'll be watching the film in a set of beds. Alongside that, there's a set of like kind of sculptural escapees that like a bunch of trophies that the tube system will lead into. And then there's sort of like little Easter egg sculptures and things that are being like plotted around the space. But and I think...
so physical Easter eggs basically in the space itself.
So I think it will hopefully be quite a enveloping space, but and similar things have happened in the past. So like for Machines of Love, it was set in a kind of Boeing 747 that was imagined to be buried underground. So we
so it was an actual Boeing 747.
It was found? No, so because a lot of airplanes got decommissioned over COVID, particularly these like Boeing ones. It was like really easy to get a hold of lots of like scrap stuff from them. So the screening room was like made out of all of these airplane seats and the kind of fuselage of the windows like around it. So you kind of watched in this like airplane.
So it's quite interesting how you've used like the whole COVID situation to feed into what you're creating, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was the worst of times.
Not for you. Yeah. Okay. And then what are you thinking? So the film will show here, and then are you going to take it to another gallery?
No, at the minute, this is the kind of main location for it. It's going to be tricky to figure out what the problem with all of these like installation works that are like so materially heavy is that you end up like stacking a bunch of like wasteful storage. So it's a bit of a conundrum. Like this one, the tube system is
another. Would you like to take it somewhere else? I mean, could you see it going?
Yeah,
no, you see yourself doing it in New York, for example?
Yeah, I think it should have like different lives. I'd love to like do different versions of the install as well. I've got a lot of like kind of inflatable sets that were used in the film that I think would be like interesting kind of parallels to it. So we'll see.
I should just say that all the clinking on this recording is because of the
yeah, buckles, I know, I should have taken
the buckles on your tabard, the multiple earrings, and the silver ear pointy ears. There's the old clunk from tabard buckle, but quite nice actually. It's like,
a little twinkle in the background. It's like wind chimes.
Wind chimes in the background. I like the idea of your films providing this idea of disguise providing an opportunity for reinventing and creating your identity for yourself. It's nice.
I think also like because we live in this, when I maybe like mentioned that a bit earlier, but this idea that we're living in like such a extended period of declining living standards, and it feels like quite maybe like naive to be optimistic about the future at the minute, or perhaps the sense that we're unable to like create change for the better at all at the minute. But at the same time, I think like art provides like a good space for maybe like prefiguration or like even if not imagining like a better world, like a different world. And I think that it's important to like hold space for that, and to create like even just like a pocket of imagination within this idea of this gridlock of long emergency that we seem to be in. And so like I think that's like why it's like really vital. So yeah, I don't know.
It's nice. It's a nice hopeful message, and it's nice to have hope and optimism at a time like this.
We'll try to
hold on to it. But thank you. You've been listening to In Talks with me, Danielle Radojcin. The sound and theme music is by Woogie Productions and the artwork is by Patrick Wall. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on to someone who you think might also like it. Please subscribe and leave a review. To pitch for guest ideas, you can DM me via my socials at Danielle Radojcin. Thanks for listening.